AITA for exposing my ex-wife's four-year lie at our son's wedding? I'm James, 48, Daniel's father, Linda's ex-husband, and for 4 years, I let people believe I was the kind of man who could walk away from his only son without looking back. I live alone now, in the quiet kind of routine you build after a marriage ends badly. Work, bills, groceries, a small kitchen table with 2 chairs even though nobody sits in the second one anymore. I still kept Daniel's old birthday cards in a shoebox in my closet. I still had a Little League photo of him tucked behind my driver's license, even though he hadn't looked me in the eye for more than a few seconds in years. I still saved every receipt from the checks I mailed, every email confirmation, every certified mail slip, not because I started out wanting revenge, but because after enough people call you a liar, you start keeping proof just to remind yourself you're not crazy. People think silence means you have nothing to say. Sometimes it means you know exactly what will happen if you start. Linda and I were married for more than 20 years. From the outside, we looked stable. Not perfect, but solid enough that people assumed we would always be there at the same holiday tables, standing beside each other in family pictures, arguing quietly about the thermostat and pretending we were fine. The truth is, the marriage had started rotting long before it collapsed. It started with her phone. Linda had never been secretive before. She used to leave her phone on the counter while she cooked, hand it to me if she needed me to read a message while she was driving, and ask me to answer it if her hands were full. Then suddenly, the screen was always face down. Password changed. Notifications hidden. She would take it into the bathroom, into the laundry room, even into the garage if she said she needed to check something real quick. When I asked, she smiled like I had embarrassed both of us. "You're acting paranoid again," she said one night, sliding her phone under a stack of mail. "Again?" I asked. "You get this way when work stresses you out." That was Linda's talent. She could turn a simple question into a character flaw before you even knew you were defending yourself. Then money started moving. At first, it was small enough to explain away. A couple $100 here, $500 there. Linda said her mother needed help with a repair. Then her cousin had an emergency. Then there was something about a late bill she had forgotten to mention. We had joint savings, and after 20 years together, I wasn't looking at every line like a detective. But the withdrawals kept coming. Vague labels. Transfers I didn't recognize. Cash withdrawals on days she told me she was spending the afternoon with her sister. And Mark was suddenly around all the time. Mark had been a casual family friend for years, the kind of guy who showed up at cookouts with a bag of ice and acted like that made him useful. He wasn't Daniel's uncle. He wasn't blood. He wasn't someone I ever thought about much until I started noticing how comfortable he looked in my kitchen. He would lean against the counter while Linda laughed too hard at something he said. He knew where the mugs were. He knew what wine she liked. Once, I came home early and found him sitting at our kitchen table with his shoes off, his phone plugged into the wall by the toaster, like the place belonged to him. "Didn't know we had company," I said. Linda didn't even turn around from the sink. "Mark stopped by to drop something off." Mark gave me a little smile. "Relax, man. Just helping out." Helping out became his favorite phrase. Helping Linda with errands. Helping her deal with family stress. Helping Daniel with things I somehow wasn't told needed doing. The first time I found a transfer tied to Mark, I stared at the bank statement for 10 minutes before I spoke. It wasn't a huge amount by itself, but it came from savings Linda and I had built together. It was labeled in the blandest possible way, like someone had tried to make it boring enough to skip over. I printed the page and waited until Daniel was out with friends. Linda was folding towels in the living room when I set the statement on the coffee table. "Why is money from our savings going to Mark?" Her hands kept moving for a second. Then she stopped. "What are you talking about?" I pointed at the line. She looked at it, sighed, and gave me that tired expression she used when she wanted me to feel small. "You always twist things when you feel insecure." That's not an answer. He needed temporary help. He paid it back. He paid it back where? "James." She said my name like I was a child interrupting adults. "Not everything has to be a trial." "No, but money leaving our account for another man deserves an explanation." That was when she got cold. "You're embarrassing yourself." I didn't yell. I wanted to. My hands were shaking, but I didn't give her the satisfaction of watching me lose control. I started looking harder after that. Not because I wanted to catch her, but because part of me already knew I had. Emails. Phone records. More transfers. A credit card charge at a place Linda claimed she had never been. A message that popped up on her laptop when she forgot to log out. I didn't need a dramatic confession. The truth had been sitting in plain sight, waiting for me to stop making excuses for her. When I finally confronted her, it was late. The house was too quiet. Daniel was asleep down the hall, a few months from finishing high school, already dealing with college applications and the kind of pressure kids pretend they're not feeling. Linda stood in the kitchen in a robe, arms crossed. "I know about Mark," I said. Her face changed for half a second. Not enough for most people to notice. Enough for me. She recovered quickly. "I'm not doing this with you." "Yes, you are." "No, James. You want to fight because you can't handle that I have people who support me." I slid a folder across the counter. Bank statements, printed messages, dates, amounts, things she could explain away one by one only if nobody looked at the pattern. She didn't open it. "I'm not fighting for a marriage you already handed to someone else," I said. For the first time, Linda looked scared. Not sorry. Scared. "What did you tell Daniel?" she asked. "Nothing." Her shoulders lowered a little. That should have warned me. I left that night and stayed in a cheap motel with bad coffee and a heater that rattled every 20 minutes. Before I walked out, I put my wedding ring beside the folder on the kitchen counter. Not as some dramatic movie gesture. I just couldn't stand having it on my hand anymore. The divorce was ugly in the way quiet divorces are ugly. No screaming in court. No smashed dishes. Just emails through attorneys, bills, divided accounts, and two people who knew exactly which words would hurt without looking cruel on paper. And Daniel. He was old enough to know something had happened, but young enough that every explanation felt like a weapon. Linda was still in the house with him. She controlled the daily story. She controlled the tone in the kitchen, the comments in the car, the late-night version of events when he was upset and wanted someone to blame. My attorney told me I had every right to tell Daniel the truth about the affair and the money. Friends told me the same thing. But Daniel was angry, hurt, and trying to finish school. I looked at my son and thought, if I tell him everything, I'll be asking him to choose. I convinced myself that silence was protection. I paid what I was supposed to pay. More than I was ordered to pay, sometimes, because Daniel needed things and I still wanted him to have them. Application fees, car repairs, a chunk toward classes, a check for a laptop when his old one died. I mailed birthday cards even when he didn't answer. I left voicemails that got shorter each time because there are only so many ways to say, "I love you," to a phone that never calls back. At first, Daniel sounded confused. Then he sounded angry. Then he sounded like Linda. "Mom said you gave up on us. Mom said you didn't want the responsibility. Mom said you barely helped." Each sentence landed harder than the last because I could hear the borrowed language in it. One Thanksgiving, I texted him 3 days ahead of time. "Me, I'd still like to see you this weekend. Dinner, coffee, anything you're comfortable with." "Daniel, Mom said you made other plans." "Me, I didn't. I've been waiting to hear from you." "Daniel, don't do that." "Me, do what?" "Daniel, make her the bad guy because you left." I sat at my kitchen table with my phone in my hand until the screen went dark. Another time, I asked him about a small award ceremony he'd mentioned months earlier. "It was yesterday," he said. "Yesterday? Your mom told me next Friday." There was a pause. "Sure, Dad." "Daniel, I would have been there. You left. What do you want me to say?" I almost told him then. I almost said, "Your mother had an affair with Mark. She moved money behind my back, and I left because staying would have meant teaching you that betrayal was normal." But I heard how tired he was. I heard how ready he was to hang up. So I swallowed it. That was my mistake. Not the divorce. Not leaving Linda. My mistake was thinking the truth could wait until Daniel was ready, while Linda spent every day making sure he never would be. For years passed like that. We didn't become strangers all at once. That would have been easier to understand. Instead, the distance grew in tiny, humiliating ways. A missed call. A one-word reply. A family group chat where my messages sat there like furniture nobody wanted to acknowledge. Holiday plans I found out about from someone's posted photo. Daniel's birthday dinner where Mark stood behind him in the picture, one hand on the back of his chair, smiling like he had earned a place I had abandoned. Then the wedding invitation came. It arrived in a thick cream envelope with my name written formally, like I was an old co-worker or a distant uncle. "James." No Dad. No note from Daniel. No private call first. I opened it at the kitchen table. Daniel and Emily were getting married in June. Emily had always been polite to me in the few times we'd crossed paths. She had a calm way about her, the kind of person who watched before she spoke. I liked her for Daniel. I liked that she didn't seem impressed by Linda's performances. A week later, a screenshot of the seating chart landed in a family group chat. I stared at it until my coffee went cold. Linda was at a front family table. Carol, Linda's mother, beside her. Mark was seated close to Daniel and Emily under the label Family Friend. I was at a table near the back with two cousins I hadn't spoken to since the divorce and a couple of people I didn't know. I said it out loud to my empty kitchen. 4 years later, and he still gets my seat. I wanted to call Daniel. I wanted to ask him if he had done that, or if Linda had. I wanted to tell him that Mark was not the man who showed up when I left. Mark was one of the reasons there was a divorce at all. Instead, I folded the invitation back into the envelope and sat there for a long time. My son's wedding was not supposed to be my courtroom. So I made a decision. I would go. I would wear a suit. I would smile when appropriate. I would tell Daniel I was proud of him. If he gave me even 30 seconds alone, I would not start anything. I would not use his wedding day to punish his mother. But I also decided something else. If Linda used that day to humiliate me publicly again, I would not stand there and let her carve one more lie into the family record. The folder wasn't new. I had been adding to it for years. Payment confirmations, copies of checks, certified mail receipts, emails asking for Daniel's schedules, texts to Linda that were ignored or answered with wrong times. The birthday letters I had sent and, later, copies of the ones I stopped sending because I had started to suspect they were never reaching him. I put the folder in my car before the rehearsal dinner, then sat in the driver's seat with both hands on the wheel, ashamed of myself for bringing it and relieved that I had. The rehearsal dinner was exactly the kind of polite discomfort I expected. People hugged me like they were handling something breakable. A few relatives did the tight smile and shoulder pat. Carol looked me up and down and said, "Well, you came." "Hello, Carol," I said. She leaned closer. "Don't make this hard for Daniel. I'm not here to make anything hard for him. That would be a first." I let that one pass. Linda floated through the room in a pale dress, greeting people with that warm, polished expression she used when she wanted an audience. Mark stood near her, laughing with two of her cousins, holding a drink he barely sipped. When he saw me, he nodded. Not apologetic. Not nervous. Smug. Emily noticed. I saw her glance from Mark to me, then to Daniel. Daniel kept adjusting his cuff, eyes down, like if he focused hard enough on the button, he could make the tension disappear. During dinner, Linda stood to say a few words. I felt my stomach tighten before she even started. She talked about Daniel's childhood, about how proud she was, about Emily joining the family. It was all smooth and sweet. Then she lifted her glass and looked right at me. "And I'll just say this," she said, her voice light enough to sound harmless. "Some men only show up when the room is full enough to clap." A few people laughed because they didn't know what else to do. It was that nervous, ugly laughter people use to get through a public insult without choosing sides. Daniel stared at his plate. Emily's face went still. I felt heat crawl up my neck. I picked up my water glass, took one sip, and set it down carefully. Linda smiled like she had done nothing wrong. After dinner, I caught Daniel in the hallway outside the room. He was alone for maybe half a minute, leaning against the wall and looking at his phone. "Daniel," I said. He looked tired before he even looked at me. "Dad, please don't start." "I'm not starting. I just want to ask you something." He slid his phone into his pocket. "What? Do you think I didn't try to be there?" His jaw moved like he was chewing back a harder answer. "Do we have to do this tonight?" "No. But your mother made a comment in front of the room, and you looked like you believed it." He laughed once, but there was no humor in it. "What am I supposed to believe?" "Mom said you stopped trying. Then she lied to both of us." His eyes sharpened. "Don't." "Daniel, I asked about your graduation. I was given the wrong time." He blinked. "What?" "I emailed your mom. I texted her. She said it started at 2. It started at 10. I know that now." His face shifted, but only for a second. Then he shut it down. "Mom said you never even asked." The hallway seemed to go quieter. I kept my voice low. "I have the emails." He looked away. "And the awards ceremony?" I asked. "The one I missed." Daniel's shoulders rose. "Mom said you forgot. She told me the wrong date." He rubbed a hand over his face. "Why are you saying this now?" Because I didn't understand how much of what you believe came from her. No, he shook his head. You don't get to walk in before my wedding and rewrite the past. I'm not rewriting it. That's what you both do. His voice cracked on the last word, and that hurt worse than anger. You both make me carry it. Emily appeared at the end of the hall then. She didn't interrupt right away. She just stood there, reading the room. Daniel turned toward her like he was grateful for an exit. We're done, he said to me. Okay, I said. But I wasn't okay. That night, I went home, took the folder out of my car, and opened everything again. The house was dark except for the laptop screen and the yellow light over the kitchen sink. I made coffee I didn't drink. I spread papers across the table in careful piles, because if I let the anger lead, I knew I would make a mess I couldn't take back. Checks to Linda marked for Daniel. Transfers for school expenses. Emails with subject lines like Daniel's schedule and graduation details. Certified mail receipts from letters I had sent after Daniel stopped answering texts. Screenshots from old messages where Linda wrote things she probably thought I'd never keep. One of them still made my stomach turn. Me. Please tell Daniel I sent the tuition payment. I don't want him stressing about it. Linda. He doesn't need to know you paid. Me. It matters that he knows I'm helping. Linda. It matters that he stops expecting you to act like a father when it's convenient. Another one, 6 months later. Me. Why didn't you give him the birthday letter? Linda. Because he was finally having a good day. Me. It was a letter from his father. Linda. If he hates you, maybe he'll stop asking questions. I had read that message before, but that night it hit differently. I had treated it like bitterness. Like divorce poison. Now, after Daniel's face in that hallway, I saw it for what it was. A strategy. The next morning, before the wedding, I called my divorce attorney. Not because I wanted to sue anyone that day, and not because I needed permission to tell the truth, but because I wanted to make sure I didn't do something stupid out of pain. She answered on the third ring and sounded like she already knew this wasn't a casual call. James, I need advice. Not a lawsuit. Just advice. I explained the wedding, the public comment, the wrong dates, the payments Daniel apparently never knew about. I told her I had documents, texts, receipts. She listened without interrupting. Finally, she said, facts are safer than accusations. Keep it short. Do not discuss private medical information, irrelevant personal insults, or anything you can't prove. If you show documents, show copies. And remember, once you do this, you don't control the room. I know. Do you? I looked at the folder on my table. No, I admitted. Probably not. Her voice softened. Then decide what your goal is before you speak. That was the sentence I held on to. My goal was not to destroy Linda. It was not to embarrass Mark, though I won't pretend the thought didn't have its appeal. It was not to make relatives gasp or make Carol choke on her judgment. My goal was Daniel. I wanted my son to stop hating a version of me that never existed. So I made copies. Not every document. Not the whole ugly history. Just enough. A payment confirmation. A bank statement showing recurring support beyond the divorce order. An email where Linda gave me the wrong graduation time. A text where she admitted Daniel didn't need to know I paid. A copy of one letter returned to me and one I had sent through certified mail. I put one set in a smaller envelope with Daniel's name on it. I put another in a folder. Then I got dressed for my son's wedding. I ironed my suit myself. I stood in front of the mirror and adjusted my tie 3 times. I looked older than I felt in some ways and younger in others. Like part of me was still the father standing behind a chain-link fence, watching Daniel swing a bat that was too big for him. Before I left, I took the Little League photo from behind my license and looked at it. Daniel was 8 in that picture, missing one front tooth, grinning like the world had never disappointed him. I'm going, I said to the empty kitchen. The ceremony was beautiful. That's the part people forget when they argue about what happened later. The wedding itself was beautiful. Emily looked steady and emotional walking down the aisle. Daniel looked nervous until he saw her, and then his whole face changed. For a few minutes, I wasn't angry. I wasn't thinking about Linda or Mark or the seating chart. I was just a father watching his son promise to build a life with someone. I sat farther back than I should have, but I stayed still. Mark sat near Linda. Carol dabbed at her eyes. Daniel glanced once in my direction before the vows. I don't know if he meant to. I don't know what he felt. But I saw him, and I nodded. Whatever happened after, I wanted the first thing he saw from me that day to be respect. At the reception, the banquet room was warm and crowded. The tables had white linens, low flowers, and little candles that made the glassware shine. People were laughing too loudly at things that weren't that funny. A DJ tested the volume 2 times. Forks clinked against plates. Every few minutes someone passed my table and gave me the same cautious smile. I was placed exactly where the screenshot said I would be. Near the back. Not hidden, but not included. Mark was near the head table. Linda saw me notice and gave me the smallest smile. I told myself to breathe. Dinner passed. Toast began. Nathan, Daniel's best man, spoke first. He was a good kid, from what I remembered. Tall, nervous, trying hard to be funny without saying anything that would get him in trouble. He told a story about Daniel helping him move in the rain. He welcomed Emily. People laughed for real that time. Then Emily's sister spoke. Sweet, emotional, a little long, but harmless. Then Linda took the microphone. The room softened for her before she even said a word. That was part of her power. She knew how to make people lean toward her. She knew how to make herself look like the woman who endured quietly and loved loudly. My Daniel, she began, pressing one hand to her chest. There were days I wondered how we were going to get through everything. But I look at you now, and I know every hard day was worth it. Applause. Daniel gave a tight smile. Linda kept going. She talked about scraped knees, school mornings, late-night talks, the way Emily had brought light into Daniel's life. Some of it was probably true. That was the thing about Linda's lies. She wrapped them in enough truth that people stopped looking for the seams. Then her voice dipped. I raised this boy through some very lonely seasons, she said. There were chairs empty that should not have been empty. There were moments when people who should have been there chose not to be. My fingers tightened around my water glass. Carol looked down at her lap. Mark nodded slowly, like a man accepting credit for surviving a fire he helped start. Linda wiped under one eye, though I didn't see any tears. But we were blessed, she continued, with people who did show up. People like Mark, who became family when family was missing. The room clapped. Mark stood halfway, gave a humble little wave, and sat back down. I looked at Daniel. His eyes were fixed on the table. Linda turned slightly, just enough to include me in the performance. And I suppose, she said with a soft laugh, it's nice that James decided to show up for once. There it was. Nervous laughter moved through the room like a bad smell. Not everyone laughed, but enough did. Enough for Daniel to flinch. Enough for Emily to whisper something to him. Enough for Linda to think she had won again. I didn't stand right away. I looked at Daniel. Not Linda. Daniel. He whispered, Dad, please. I don't know if he meant please don't, please leave it alone, or please don't make me feel this right now. Nathan, poor Nathan, stepped in with the desperate smile of a best man trying to keep a reception from turning into a family funeral. Maybe Daniel's dad wants to say a few words too, he said, holding the microphone toward me. The room went very still. Linda's face tightened. Carol muttered, oh no. I stood. My legs felt steady, which surprised me. I took the microphone from Nathan and gave him a small nod. He looked like he regretted every decision that had brought him to that moment. I walked toward the head table, not all the way, just close enough that Daniel wouldn't have to hear me from across the room. This won't be long, I said. My voice sounded calmer than I felt. I looked at Daniel. I didn't come here to ruin your wedding. I came here because I love you. I came here because I'm proud of you. And I came here because I was tired of being erased from my own son's life. Someone whispered, Jesus. Linda stood halfway. James, this is not the time. I turned to her. You made it the time when you said my name into a microphone. Her mouth closed. Then I looked back at Daniel. I'm not going to tell every ugly detail. This is still your wedding. But you deserve to know that I did not abandon you. I left the marriage after I found out about the affair with Mark and the money that had been moved out of our accounts. I stayed quiet because I thought not making you choose was the same as protecting you. I was wrong. The sound in the room changed. Chairs creaked. Someone set down a glass too hard. Mark's face went pale first. That gave away more than anything he could have said. Linda's voice sharpened. How dare you? I set the folder on the edge of the head table. Facts, I said. Not a speech. Not revenge. Facts. Carol stood up. You stop this right now. No, I said, without raising my voice. I stopped for 4 years. Daniel didn't move. Emily put her hand on his arm. She didn't tell him what to do. She just stayed beside him. I opened the folder and took out the smaller envelope with Daniel's name. This is yours, I said. You don't have to read it here. But some of it matters tonight, because your mother just told this room I chose not to show up. Linda reached for the envelope. Emily moved faster than I expected. She placed her hand flat on the table between Linda and the envelope. Let him decide, Emily said. Linda stared at her like she had been slapped. Daniel picked up the envelope. His hands were shaking. I took out one page. This is a payment confirmation for the semester your mother told you I refused to help with. This is the text where she wrote, he doesn't need to know you paid. This is the email where I asked for your graduation time. This is her reply telling me 2 o'clock. Your graduation started at 10. Daniel's face changed with each page. Not into forgiveness. Not into love. Into shock. Into the terrible understanding that anger has been living in the wrong house. That's not the whole story, Linda snapped. No, I said. It's not. The whole story is worse. But it's enough to prove I didn't disappear. Mark pushed his chair back. A cousin near him said, Where are you going? Mark didn't answer. Linda turned on him. Sit down. He froze, then sat halfway, then stood again. Cowardice has a posture. I saw it right there, in the way he couldn't decide whether to pretend innocence or flee before someone asked about the money. Daniel pulled one folded letter from the envelope. I knew which one it was before he opened it. Blue paper. I had written it 2 years after the divorce, on his 23rd birthday. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't a masterpiece. It said I was proud of him, that I missed our breakfasts after early practices, that I knew he was angry and I would be there when he was ready. I had mailed it certified because by then I no longer trusted normal mail to reach him. Daniel read the first few lines and stopped. He looked at Linda. You had this the whole time? Linda's face folded into pain so quickly that half the room probably believed it. Daniel, honey, this is not how. You had this. I was trying to protect you. That sentence almost made me laugh, but there was nothing funny left in me. Daniel's voice dropped. From a birthday letter? Linda started crying then. Real tears, maybe. Maybe not. It didn't matter. He left us, she said. He doesn't get to come in here after everything and make me the villain. I looked at her and felt something strange. Not love. Not even hatred. Just exhaustion. You didn't just divorce me, Linda, I said. You edited me out of my son's life. Carol pointed a shaking finger at me. You are humiliating her at her son's wedding. No, I said. She humiliated me at my son's wedding. She did it at the rehearsal dinner too. She did it for 4 years in private. Tonight, she made it public again. Carol's eyes were wet and furious. A decent man would have waited. A decent mother would have given him his letters. That shut her up for a second. The room had split into little pockets of whispers. Some people stared at the table. Some stared at Linda. A few looked at me like I had done something unforgivable. Maybe I had. I still don't know what a clean choice would have looked like by then. Daniel was still holding the letter. I wanted to reach for him. I didn't. I'm sorry, I told him. Not for telling the truth. For waiting so long that this was the way you heard it. His eyes were red. Why didn't you tell me? That question hit harder than every insult Linda had ever thrown at me. Because I thought I was protecting you, I said. Because I thought if I didn't drag you into it, you'd have some peace. Because I underestimated how much damage a lie can do when only one person is allowed to talk. Linda whispered, Daniel, don't listen to this. He didn't look at her. Emily leaned close to him and said something I couldn't hear. He nodded once, barely. The DJ, bless him, had turned the music completely off. Nobody seemed to know what to do with their hands. I placed the rest of the copies on the table. There's more. You can read it later or never. That's your choice. I'm not asking you to forgive me tonight. I'm not asking you to hate your mother. I'm asking you to stop hating a man I never was. Then I handed the microphone back to Nathan. He took it like it might explode. Linda came around the table toward me. Her voice was low and sharp now, all the polish gone. You're proud of yourself? No. You ruined his wedding. I looked past her at Daniel and Emily, standing in the wreckage of a moment none of us could put back together. I told the truth after you used his wedding to lie about me again. You could have waited. You had 4 years to tell the truth in private. You chose public lies. Mark tried to slip out during that exchange. 2 relatives watched him go. One of Linda's cousins followed him into the hallway, not yelling, just calling his name with the kind of tone that says the conversation is not over. I didn't chase him. I didn't want to. Mark had taken enough space in my life. Carol came close enough that I could smell wine on her breath. You are cruel, she said. Maybe, I said. She looked surprised that I didn't fight the word. I can live with people debating my timing, I said. I can't live with my son believing I didn't love him. Then I left the room. Not the building. Not right away. I stepped outside through a side door into the parking lot. The night air was cool against my face. I loosened my tie and stood beside my car, hands on the roof, breathing like I had just run miles. Inside, the reception stumbled back to life in pieces. A little music. Then silence. Then music again. I heard laughter later, thin at first, then stronger. I was glad for that. Daniel and Emily deserved some part of the night back. Daniel didn't follow me. Part of me wanted him to. A larger part of me knew that would have been too easy. Truth does not fix 4 years in one night. It just knocks down the wall hiding the damage. I said what I came to say. The rest was his to decide. I drove home before the reception ended. My phone buzzed 2 times on the way, but I didn't look until I was parked in my driveway. The first message was from a cousin of Linda's. I'm sorry. We only heard her side. The second was from an unknown number. You should be ashamed. That was not the place. By morning, my phone looked like a family battlefield. Some messages were apologies, saying things like, James, I had no idea about the payments, and I'm sorry for what I said after the divorce. One simply asked, did Linda really keep his letters? Others were not. You hurt Daniel just to hurt Linda. There is a time and place. You made yourself look bitter. Carol called and left a voicemail, so long the phone cut her off. Then she called again to finish it. I deleted both without listening all the way through. Linda sent paragraphs. Then more paragraphs. She accused me of abusing her trust, weaponizing private matters, humiliating her, poisoning Daniel, and destroying Emily's memory of her wedding day. She never once said she hadn't done it. That was what I noticed most. Not one denial of the documents. Mark didn't contact me at all. A few days later, I heard through the family grapevine that he had left early, argued with Linda in the parking lot, and stopped answering some relatives who had questions about the money. I didn't need every detail. I had lived with enough of Mark's shadow. The only message I wanted didn't come that first day, or the second. On the third evening, I was washing a plate in the sink when my phone rang. Daniel's name lit up the screen. I dried my hands twice before answering. Hey, I said. There was a long silence. Hey, he said. His voice sounded rough, like he hadn't been sleeping. I leaned against the counter and closed my eyes for a second. How are you? I asked. Don't do that. Okay. Another silence. Then he said, do you still have the letters? I looked toward the hallway, toward the closet where the shoebox sat on the top shelf. Every one. All of them. Yes. Why? Because throwing them away felt like agreeing that you'd never want them. He breathed out slowly. I heard Emily say something softly in the background, then a door close. Mom says you twisted everything, he said. I'm sure she does. She says the money stuff is complicated. Some of it probably is. The documents are still real. She says you're trying to turn me against her. I'm not asking you to cut off your mother. You're not. No. She's your mother. That relationship is yours to figure out. I'm asking for the chance to have my own relationship with you based on what actually happened. His voice broke a little. I hated you. I know. No. I mean, I really hated you. I know. I thought you just decided I was too much work. That one nearly took my legs out. Daniel, I said, and had to stop. He didn't rescue me from the silence. Maybe he needed to hear me struggle. I should have trusted you with the truth sooner, I said. I thought I was keeping you out of adult ugliness. But I left you alone with her version, and that hurt you. I'm sorry. He sniffed once. I don't know what to do with all of this. You don't have to know tonight. I'm mad at you too. You should be. That seemed to surprise him. I missed things because I trusted the wrong person to pass along information, I said. But I also missed chances to fight harder for direct contact with you. I can explain why I made those choices, but I can't pretend they didn't affect you. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, can we meet? Not at your place. Not Mom's. Just somewhere normal. Coffee. Yeah. Name the day. We met 2 mornings later at a coffee shop neither of us had any history with. Neutral ground. Daniel arrived first and sat at a table near the window. He looked older than he had at the wedding. Marriage will do that a little. Family truth will do it faster. He had the birthday letter with him, folded carefully in the envelope. I ordered coffee I barely tasted and sat across from him. For a minute, we talked like strangers. Traffic. The weather. whether Emily was okay. He said she was upset, but not at him. Not exactly at me either. She said nobody should have to find that out at their wedding, he said. She's right. He looked at me. But she also said Mom shouldn't have used the microphone first. She's right about that too. He stared down at his cup. I don't know how to be around Mom right now. You don't have to decide everything at once. She keeps crying. I believe that. She keeps saying you planned it. I plan not to be defenseless if she attacked me in public again. That's not the same as wanting it to happen. Daniel looked out the window. Did you want to hurt her? I answered honestly. In that moment, a part of me did. I won't lie to you. But that's not why I stood up. Why did you? Because I saw your face when she said I showed up for once. And I realized if I sat there quietly, I was helping her lie to you. His mouth tightened. I wish you'd told me before. I do too. I wish you hadn't done it there. I understand. I'm not saying you were wrong to tell me. I know. I'm saying I hate that now every time I think about my wedding, I'm going to remember that too. That was the part one couldn't defend away. I'm sorry for that, I said. He nodded once, not accepting it fully, but not rejecting it either. We spent almost 2 hours going through pieces of the past. Not all of it. Enough. He asked about graduation. I showed him the email. He asked about the laptop. I showed him the payment. He asked if I knew Linda had told him I refused to come to his birthday dinner when he turned 21. I hadn't even known there was a dinner. He believed me when he saw my face. At one point, he pushed his coffee away and said, I feel stupid. Don't. I believed everything. You believed the parent who was standing closest to you. That doesn't make you stupid. He rubbed both hands over his face. I said awful things to you. I kept showing up badly. Halfway. Through messages, checks, cards you didn't even get. I should have found a better way. You did keep the letters. I did. Can I read them? Whenever you want. He nodded, and for the first time in years, he looked at me without that wall of practiced anger. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But recognition. That was enough for that morning. The fallout kept going, because families do not let truth arrive quietly. Linda's side split into camps. Some relatives apologized. Some decided I was honest, but cruel. Carol never came around. She sent one final text that said, you could have protected him from all of this. I typed 3 different replies and deleted them all. In the end, I sent only one. So could Linda. She never responded. Daniel didn't cut Linda off in some dramatic, movie-style declaration. That wouldn't have been realistic. She is still his mother. He still has a lifetime of memories with her, and not all of them are lies. But he stopped letting her control every conversation. He asked for space. He told her not to speak for him anymore. When she tried to explain the letters, he told her, not now. That was a consequence she couldn't perform her way out of. As for Mark, he disappeared from family events for a while. I heard he and Linda were taking time, which is a polite phrase people use when the foundation is full of termites. Maybe they stayed together. Maybe they didn't. I stopped caring sooner than I expected. Daniel and I started small. A text about a game. Coffee again 2 weeks later. A phone call where we talked for 15 minutes and nobody mentioned the divorce. Then one Sunday, he came over and sat at my kitchen table in the second chair that had been empty for years. I gave him the shoebox. He opened it slowly. Birthday cards, letters, old photos, receipts tucked in envelopes because I had been too angry to separate love from proof. He picked up the Little League picture and smiled before he could stop himself. I remember that bat, he said. You insisted it wasn't too heavy. It was too heavy. You struck out 3 times. He laughed softly. You bought me ice cream after. You looked like you were going to cry. I was going to cry. We sat there with the shoebox between us, both of us pretending the little silence that followed wasn't full of years. Finally, he said, I don't know how long this takes. We don't have to rush it. I'm still angry. I know. But I don't want to be done. That was the closest thing to forgiveness I had any right to hope for. I still think about the wedding. I think about Emily, who handled it with more grace than anyone had the right to ask of her. I think about Daniel holding that letter while the room watched his childhood rearrange itself in his hands. I think about the relatives who laughed at Linda's jab because laughing was easier than being uncomfortable. And yes, I think about whether I should have waited. Maybe there was a better time. Maybe a better man would have swallowed that insult too, pulled Daniel aside weeks later, and laid everything out quietly. But I know myself. I know the pattern. Linda would have explained it first. She would have softened the edges, questioned my motives, told Daniel I was bitter because she was happy, and turned my proof into another attack before he ever saw it. That was how she had won for 4 years. Silence felt noble until I realized it had become her favorite weapon. I don't regret telling the truth. I regret letting the lie grow so big that the truth had to make noise when it finally came out. Now Daniel has the letters. He has the records. He has my number saved again, not buried under old anger. We are not fixed, but we are real. That matters more to me than looking polite in front of people who were comfortable watching me be erased. Linda can still tell whatever version helps her sleep. Carol can call me cruel. Mark can avoid every room where someone might ask him a direct question. But my son knows I did not abandon him. For the first time in 4 years, when Daniel looks at me, he is looking at me, not the man Linda invented. If you like the stories, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.